Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jerry Cooey.
I'm Deborah Nelson. Thank you for joining us after a extended absence, especially from one member of our team here.
Well,
we almost had a show after the elections, and you were too depressed.
It's been very busy. You know, my efforts are not only extending into Wakulla County, but Escambia County, and recently made a trip out of town and was at a watchdog summit, and what we find is everybody's hungry, and our numbers of watchdogs are getting stronger and stronger. I will make a brief comment about the election. In Santa Rosa County, I think the citizens, I think they made some good choices. I think we're good.
There weren't that many choices to make.
There weren't that many choices on the national election, however. And let me look into the camera while I say this. I don't know why y'all voted for Jeff Miller. I really don't. I would vote for the devil before I would vote for Jeff Miller. I'm sorry, plain and simple, end of story. If you haven't caught this yet, let me let you know that Jeff Miller took it another step this week. The preliminary vote has occurred. The next step is the government has full right to look at all your emails without your permission, without involving a judge. So that's what's next on the docket. As far as the national elections,
let me just add, Jeff Miller's also tied up with this Trans-Pacific Partnership, NAFTA in the Far East, NAFTA number 3, that's going to lose us even more jobs.
Exactly.
And they're all excited about that as well.
Sad day in America that Jeff Miller gets reelected. Of course, that's my humble opinion, and they haven't passed a law yet that keeps me from having an opinion, although I'm sure somebody's working on it right now.
Well, the thing that gets me, as you know, I'm a liberal, one of the fringe far-left liberals, and I'm a Second Amendment rights liberal. And I argue with Best Boy on this all the time, but I think when it comes down to it, I think Miller's going to vote against the Second Amendment at some point.
Oh,
I think when his time comes, he'll vote against it.
Well, no, here's the vote you can count on with Jeff Miller. Whatever Big Daddy pats him on top of the head and tells him to vote for, he will, because he apparently is incapable of reading a bill.
Yeah.
I mean, I was at the only debate that he stuck his head out of the sandbox and showed up to, and he didn't know what was in the defense reauthorization bill that he voted for and signed.
Yeah.
So, you know, and just to remind you, in that bill, they can pick you up at your house and carry you away with no due process and keep you locked up forever,
military arrest. Just
because they put you, refer to you as a terrorist. They can do with you whatever they want to, whether you are one or not, a U.S. citizen, folks. And
we have the UN now gearing up with their small arms treaty again.
Small arms treaty, folks. I would suggest to you, you get down to your sporting goods store or whatever source that you have. Buy plenty of large capacity clips and plenty of bullets, because they're coming for those next.
Some reloading equipment and some lead bars.
I got an email. I had seen it before. It was really interesting to me. Someone pulled the hunting licenses in Pennsylvania. Do you know just the hunters in Pennsylvania in one state represent the world's 3rd largest army?
Really?
There's 600,000 hunters in Pennsylvania. If you gather together kind of the central part of the U.S. along with the South, which certainly has plenty of guns and bullets, you have the world's largest army.
Don't count the urbanites out either. Remember Bernard Getz. I have something for each of you.
Yeah. But as far as the national elections, and I will keep my comments brief. Obama is now your president for the 2nd term. I didn't vote for him the first time. I didn't vote for him the 2nd time. I used this television program and word of mouth and everything that I could, and Facebook and email and all sources available to me, to warn the masses of what we got here. So I'm drawing a line in the sand right here, folks. I don't want to hear one word about we've got problems. I don't want to hear a word about I can't get a job. I don't want to hear a word about the government is taking advantage of me. I don't want to hear it. I will be the first to admit that Romney might not have been the top candidate for the Republicans, but I can assure you that Dictator Obama, I will no longer refer to him as Barack Hussein Obama. It is Dictator Obama, and there are already conversations going on how he may try to have a third term. So, you know, you've been warned, and I'll tell you something right now. It was highlighted recently in a Facebook exchange that carried on. For all you 18 to 35s that lined up like sheep and voted for Barack Hussein Obama, our next dictator, I'm sorry for you, because you are the ones that are going to be hurt. Those of us that have fought hard for freedom in this country, who have pushed the envelope to make sure the Constitution means something, I'll tell you, I've insulated myself pretty well from what's fixing to occur. But for that 18 to 35 group, you remember that inheritance your family was working on for you that you thought you was going to get? It's probably going to evaporate. Those good paying jobs, probably going to evaporate. So I don't want to hear it. I didn't vote for him. I know what he's all about. Period. End of story. I wish you all well. And if I see you in an email, a Facebook, or in a personal conversation lamenting the fact that Obama is the president, I'm going to ask you who you voted for. All right? You got what you asked for.
Well,
so
I'm just going to quickly say this. It was about 50-50, basically liberal versus conservative. And it could have gone either way. And I think if you talk to either one of those sides, they would have had about the same complaints. So what you've got is you've got candidates who are both, I'm going to go ahead and say it, have beholden at least to the same powers that be. Up the chain.
Well, there's not a whole lot of difference between them.
It becomes one line up the chain eventually. Right. And they've learned to tailor their message depending on which party they're in to who they're
or what room they're in.
That is correct. That is correct. So instead of focusing on it's this party in power or it's this group in power, I would hope that people would start putting screws to their other elected representatives, starting with the House of Representatives, our friend Mr. Jeff Miller, and other people like that, and put the screws to them and pressure them.
Well,
to pay attention to what's going on, because it's the same agendas coming through this administration that came through the Bush administration. It's the same problem.
Both parties, New World Order. It's okay to drag people out of their houses. Soon it will be okay for them to read your emails. They're already listening to your telephone conversations.
Well, the individual mandate, which my liberal friends are annoyed with me because I had a problem with the individual mandate with Obamacare. That's now a constitutional problem.
Well,
that was the Supreme Court we can blame for that.
But
regardless of what side you're on, pay attention to the fine print in the legislation, and then call up your representatives and put their feet to the fire.
Yeah, and in the case of Jeff Miller, just because he wraps himself up in the flag and gives a fiery speech, he still voted for the defense reauthorization bill, which allows them to drag you out of your house.
And I'll just say this of Mr. Miller, over the years, the quality of his suits, I've observed, has
nicer and nicer,
considerably improved. He's in a place now. This is your check as the people against Jeff Miller. I don't believe he wants to lose that office at any cost.
Well, he can't.
And that's your check against him.
He can't run for senator because nobody knows him. Nobody would want him as a senator.
He makes a lot of money and he's got a good spot in D.C.
Sure.
Just doing what he's doing is, I'm sure it's a wonderful job up there.
It's fine. It's fine being okay, Daddy. Okay, Daddy. What do you want me to vote for this week? Daddy, what do you want me to push?
It's nice to get money from big donors, but it's even scarier to think about somebody voting you out.
Well, if I could wave my magic wand, I would take every law that's on the books today and wipe the slate clean and flop down a copy of the U.S. Constitution. This is where we're going to start again. Because where we're at today, a piggybacked law and the way the courts work things. Folks, it's no different than the speech business that we've been fighting over. The Supreme Court rules one way years ago, then a local court rules a different way, and then somehow that piggybacks into you don't have the right to speak at a public meeting. You know, it's completely topsy-turvy anymore, and you know,
pick up the phone, call them, and scare them.
I hate to use the C word, but the level of corruption.
Oh yeah, that's the issue.
It's across the board anymore. Okay, it's absolutely across the board. I don't know if anybody can get a fair shake on anything if they decide to go after you.
That leads us to our next subject.
That leads us to our next subject. We're going to close out this topic. We're going to close the chapter, ladies and gentlemen.
It's been a big part of our show.
We're going to spend about the next 18 or so minutes here. We're going to close the chapter on Team Santa Rosa.
And I want just to go over the recent event that happened. This was the closing. This is the finale, sort of, to this. Is you and Mr. Alan Isaacson were working with the state attorney, Bill Eden's office.
Right.
On when the FBI came, they found out a bunch of stuff. No charges were filed. However, they passed some information over to Eden's office and said, you may want to follow up on this.
Right.
So you've been working with them. There was a centerpiece of evidence, which was reported widely, especially the Pensacola News Journal, which was that a former employee, Pat Lockhart, told the News Journal, and she told the FBI that she had been told to change the minutes.
She was instructed by the head of economic development, Cindy Anderson, and apparently others. She specifically said Cindy Anderson, to change the minutes, to falsify documentation, to hide the grant issue.
It was to hide that a member of the board, in other words, to say that she had stepped down off the board when she hadn't actually, because she took she ended up getting the contract.
$170,000 federal grant.
That came to Team Santa Rosa while she was the vice chair of Team Santa Rosa.
So, just to, you know,
what happened was, Mr. Edens went through the entire public expense of a grand jury process, and at the end of the day, came to discover, unbeknownst to you and Mr. Isaacson, that the Pat Lockhart testimony information had its statute of limitations had expired on that.
Well, according to them, I still argue that fact.
Well, and what did he say to you to last night's testimony?
Well,
you two were standing there, and he passed by you, and he said,
"Well, yeah, this is the part that's really that kind of shocked me." Prior to the day of the start of the grand jury, Mr. Edens himself walked by myself and Mr. Isaacson, and all he said, he looked at both of us and said, "Okay, you fellas enjoy your day," with a smirk on his face, and walked off. Very, very telling to me. I can't, for the life of me, and this is what I think concerns me the most. And then
when he issued the press release that said the grand jury had found that they couldn't charge them because they couldn't use that evidence, is I'm sure part of the reason, he mentioned your name in the press release.
Yeah, you know, that's another troubling thing, folks. I want you to think about this one for a moment. Here we are, two citizens, and of course there was some other folks that helped in all this, but here we are, two citizens. Now it is beat into us that a grand jury proceeding it's secret. It's double secret. You know, it's you know, everything that goes on here is secret.
We can't get records for
so they finally do a grand jury. They don't call us. They don't take the time to have just a 2-minute conversation with myself or Mr. Isaacson. They send out a press release. In the top line is every person involved in the media, from all the way to the coast of the east coast of Florida into Mississippi. In the CC line is my name and Alan's name. Now, I think a lot of people know that you know, we've been toting the water on this and trying to get justice served here, but I took it. My humble opinion. This is what I took away from that. We the state attorney's office, wanted everyone to know who pushed this issue, and I certainly sent an email, and it's a matter of public record, ladies and gentlemen. If you wish to see it yourself, you can contact Mr. Marcel. But I told him at the state attorney's office, I told him point blank that I felt like they had put my family's life in danger over this. I had to swear an oath at the start of that until it was over with, not to have any discussions about it. And the next thing I know, as soon as it's over with, they basically, you know, told the world. But that's okay. That's okay. I'm a big boy. If I understand how the game is played now. You know, we really, folks, and Alan and I laugh about it, and Deborah, we're going to see if Deborah won't start writing on it, but we are going to produce a book. You would be shocked at what it took just to get a grand jury here. I mean, they called us over there 5 times. I spent my money, my time, my gas, and paid to park my vehicle 5 times for them to look at me and tell me, no, I just don't think we're going to be able to do anything. And what finally broke it, and I want our viewers to know this, because there was a lot of moving parts behind the scenes that went on here. We went to the state attorney's office armed with what Deborah had talked about. An employee of Team Santa Rosa had testified that she had been instructed to falsify public documents to hide the $170,000 military affairs. We went to the state attorney's office, and folks, look, I went in there every time with a smile on my face. Not being abusive, not trying to, whatever little weight I might have, wasn't trying to throw that around. So we went in there and said, look, here is Pat Lockhart's telephone number, right here. Here is another person's telephone number. And here is the FBI agent that found it. Here is her telephone number. We would like for you to do something about it. We waited 3 weeks. Not a word out of the state attorney's office. Nothing. Not a return phone call. Not we're working on it. Nothing. So we went to the Pensacola News Journal. Pensacola News Journal verified our sources. They ran the story front page on 2 different days. Well, guess what? After it hit the front page of the Pensacola News Journal, within an hour, I'm getting a phone call from the state attorney's office. Hey, you think you could come back down here and talk to us? So we went back down there, and God bless Alan. Alan looked at him and said, "Did that story embarrass you?" And actually, Bill Edens had to agree that he did. So Alan said, we think something needs to be done here. And if you think that embarrassed you, just wait till we turn loose of the rest of the 29 stories that's out there. That's the only reason we ever got a grand jury to start out with. Yeah. Because they were concerned about what we were going to the media next. And certainly we still have 29 more stories. We're just weighing our options right now on which way we should go on this. But of all things, and this is after the fact, so I can say this now, one of the things that we impressed upon the state attorney's office is that you must, if you actually are taking this serious, if you want to serve justice in this community, you must call in the FBI agent and interview her. Not one phone call to an FBI agent. A person who investigated all the ins and outs of Santa Rosa County for 31 months, the state attorney's office didn't call the key witness in. Yeah. Okay? My humble opinion, I don't think they want to charge anybody with anything. There was a general attitude that, well, you guys have done a great job. You got rid of Cindy Anderson. You got rid of Team Santa Rosa. You have influence in your community now. why should we go any further? That's kind of the general attitude, you know. And I looked at Bill Edens in the eyes, and I said, well, it's very similar, Mr. Edens, to the reason that the sheriff's department and the state troopers write speeding tickets. It's called a deterrent. Okay? We, the citizens, did our part. We got rid of a cancerous organization. And by the way, Dave Hawksing, you can run your mouth all you want to. He was the former chairman of Team Santa Rosa. You can get out in the press and run your mouth all you want to. The organization that you were the head of, those employees, and it happened before you were there. I'm not saying you had anything to do with it, but there was a core problem in that organization. But when you look at, you know, we did our part, but where's the deterrent? Yeah. You know, if no elected or appointed official, and let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the raw numbers, folks. The state attorney's office, for the years that Bill Edens has been the state attorney, name me the elected and appointed officials that have been brought up on charges.
Well, we have the situation with John Powell.
Elected or appointed. Yeah. We are going to talk about that. But elected or appointed, under Bill Edens, 0. The previous state attorney that held that job took out 4 county commissioners on one lick.
That's right.
The only reason, once again, my humble opinion, the only reason that the state attorney's office went swimming over in Okaloosa County is because the FBI beat them to the punch and made them look bad. Here's the sheriff running hundreds of thousands of dollars over there, and you didn't know anything about it, so they nailed the sheriff and the money handler, so the state attorney's office had egg on their face.
Well, let's mention that you had gone and you'd spoken to them years ago about this same issue when that Pat Lockhart testimony would not have exceeded the statute of limitations.
Well, absolutely.
And they didn't bother to talk to anybody at the time.
You know, this is the thing that is so aggravating about the state attorney's office. We were in their office in 2009. Deborah, myself, Romy, and Alan Isaacson, and we discussed this very issue in front of them. Of course, they now act like it didn't happen. I'll be more than happy to have somebody hook up a lie detector to me, if that's what it comes down to, because I know what was discussed in there. We went with our guns loaded on that day to lay everything out to them.
You brought folders full of...
Absolutely.
Well, and we went in, you and I went a couple years earlier and asked them simply to rule or issue an opinion on whether Team Santa Rosa was subject to Sunshine Law because they were refusing to open their meetings and give us public records.
And we couldn't even get a phone call.
It took, Charlie Crist came to town for something else. We went to it. You went and tattled to him. He furrowed his brow. He called his guy in Escambia, and they apparently called Team Santa Rosa and said, your meetings are now open. And et cetera. And I guess they must have called Edens' office, because he then later issued the opinion and said, well, they broke the law, but they didn't mean to.
They didn't mean to.
So there's no further action.
Folks, here's the thing that you need to ask yourself, and I know, and I have friends that have had brushes with the state attorney's office. Here's the thing that you need to ask. Since Bill Edens has been the state attorney of District 1, there have been 0 prosecutions of any elected or appointed official. The math just doesn't work for me.
Not in this area, it doesn't.
It just doesn't work. There is no way, no how, that the number of elected officials that we have across a 4-county area, that not one of them has done anything wrong.
Well, especially since you and I and Alan and Romy White have actually brought them folders that have shown that they have.
You know, and then, and I do want to take a couple moments to talk about the Powell persecution. David Morgan, and let me say this. I think David Morgan's done a good job as a sheriff over there. I think he deserved re-election. That's not what the issue is in this conversation. John Powell decided to run for sheriff. It's his right. He lives in the United States of America. They're both campaigning. They exceeded... you're only allowed to take up to $50 in cash in a in a political contribution. Mr. Powell had, I don't know, 16 or 17 that was over $50. Sheriff Morgan had a few that was over $50. Across the 1st District, there was 19 candidates in this election cycle, and some of them had been in office already. There was 19 candidates that exceeded the $50 limit. Now, here's the first thing. We have an elections commission, and I think it is an absolute crying shame that we're going to tie up a grand jury, judges, lawyers, and court time over $1,200, to be quite honest with you. Number two, how is it that this state attorney's office only finds one person to prosecute?
It's called selective prosecution.
Well, you know, 19 other people did the same thing. I'm not grasping the concept.
I just want to quickly say we do invite any viewers who have been victims, they believe, of selective prosecution by the state attorney's office. We invite them, sreditor@bellsouth.net. Email us, get in touch with us. We'd be happy to
we would like to hear from you. But the other troubling thing in this is apparently Mr. Powell's attorney brought forth a state statute that says in the grand jury room, the prosecutor, which means a representative of the state attorney's office, may have an assistant, but that assistant has to be a member of the bar, which means they have to be an attorney also. Well, in the grand jury for Mr. Powell, they had a non-lawyer in the room. And I don't know why it went so quickly. I can assure you that once Mr. Powell's attorney put forth his arguments to the court, there was very quick negotiations over a weekend.
Yeah.
Not Monday through Friday, over the weekend. And all of a sudden, Mr. Powell is going to do pretrial diversion. And but that just goes to show you, folks, you need to watch very carefully. 2 years from now, we'll be looking for a new state attorney, and I hope one will show up. I'm Jerry Cooey.
I'm Deborah Nelson. Thanks for watching. Good night.